The school's main office was quiet, bathed in late morning sunlight filtering through the windows. Behind the front desk, the secretary typed rhythmically, pausing only when the soft chime of a new email echoed from the administrator's laptop. Subject: Concern about fifth grade teacher, Mr. Ellis from Karen Whitmore. The message was short, careful, worded like a question but heavy with implication. Hi, I hope this message finds you well. I'm writing not to make a formal complaint, but I do have some concerns about Mr. Ellis in room 205. While I understand he is new and still adjusting, I've noticed a shift in my son's mood since the start of the semester. He says Mr. Ellis has a stern tone and is very intense. I don't know. I just want to be sure this teacher is the right fit for our school community. Thank you for your time. There were no specifics, no policy violations, just tone, just intensity, just something off. By noon, the principal had read it 3 times. Across campus, Mr. Ellis stood at the front of his classroom, tie slightly loosened, sleeves rolled up, explaining the structure of a persuasive essay. His students were focused, scribbling ideas in their journals. Every few minutes, he walked between the rows, offering comments like, "Good use of contrast, Mia. Interesting thesis, Jamal. Challenge yourself to go deeper. Leo, your voice matters. Don't hold it back." He taught with quiet passion, not the performative energy some parents expected from teachers, but real presence, measured, thoughtful. There were no raised voices, no power plays. Just a man who took education seriously and expected his students to do the same. He didn't know about the email yet, but he could already feel the tension, the sideways looks during dismissal, the polite but curt greetings in the morning drop-off line. He'd taught long enough to know the signs, and though he never said it aloud, he'd learned this lesson early. Strict from a white teacher means disciplined. Strict from a black teacher too often means aggressive. He swallowed that thought, like always, and kept teaching. It started small, a comment in the pickup line, a glance at the PTA meeting, a murmured aside at the local coffee shop between moms in yoga pants and curated smiles. "So, what do you think of Mr. Ellis?" The words were always soft, harmless on the surface. But behind them, the real message. Something about him feels off, right? Karen was careful not to sound accusatory. She never said he was bad, just different. She told other parents her son felt anxious, that Mr. Ellis wasn't as warm as the previous teacher, that he had a way of speaking that felt intense. She used words like energy and tone. Not one parent heard her say black, but most of them heard it anyway. At a birthday party that weekend, another mom brought it up while the kids chased balloons in the backyard. I mean, he's very formal, don't you think? I walked past his classroom the other day, so quiet in there. Like military school, Karen nodded. Exactly. It just doesn't feel nurturing. One by one, the seeds were planted. A network of unspoken discomfort began to grow. Meanwhile, in room 205, Mr. Ellis stayed late every evening. He didn't notice the whisper campaign taking shape. Not yet. He was too busy reviewing essays, building lesson plans, giving real feedback where most teachers handed out check marks. He believed in honest praise and in holding students to the potential he knew they carried, even if the world told them otherwise. He worked in silence while the school emptied around him. He didn't know that several parents had begun CCing the principal on concerns. He didn't know that words like aggressive, harsh, and not a good cultural fit were being casually dropped in administrative conversations. But he felt it, in the silence when he entered the staff lounge, in the too polite tone of some emails, in the way one parent stepped between him and her child during pickup, like a shield. And still, he taught, because that's what he came here to do. The email came mid-morning, sandwiched between a reminder about fire drill protocols and a note about a copier jam. Subject: Quick check-in. Today, after school, from Principal Lisa Halberg. Mr. Ellis read it twice, nothing alarming on the surface. Still, he felt it settle like a stone in his chest. Quick check-in rarely meant quick, and it never meant nothing. He responded simply, "Sure. Room 205 at 3:30. The meeting room was bright and quiet. One frame poster read, "Every child matters." The other said, "We rise by lifting others." Principal Halberg sat across from him, a tight smile on her face. She folded her hands the way administrators do when they're trying to look calm while delivering discomfort. "First, thank you for meeting, Mr. Ellis. I want to start by saying we really appreciate what you're bringing to the school." Mr. Ellis smiled politely. "Thank you. That said, a few parents have reached out with some minor concerns." She said it softly, like she didn't want the air to hear. "Concerns?" She glanced at her notes. "Not about your teaching content, per se. More about tone, warmth. Some parents feel your classroom atmosphere is a bit tense." Ellis kept his face still. "Have there been specific incidents?" "No. No formal complaints. Just a general discomfort." "From whom?" "I'd rather not get into names." He nodded slowly. "Of course. Always concerns without context. Discomfort without data. And always nameless. Can I ask, are there any issues with my classroom management, grades, feedback, or parent communication?" Halberg hesitated. "No, none that I've seen. Actually, your grading reports have been very thorough, a beat passed. So, we're talking about feelings." She blinked. "Well, yes. I suppose we are whos. Some students feel you're hard to read, maybe a little intense. And some parents have said their children feel intimidated." Ellis took a breath. He leaned back in the chair. His voice, when it came, was quiet and even. "If I may ask, if I were a white man with the same tone, same structure, same expectations, would we be having this conversation?" Halberg opened her mouth, but nothing came out, because they both knew the answer. He stood slowly, without raising his voice. "I care about these students. I push them. I believe in them. That doesn't always look like softness. Sometimes it looks like standards." She cleared her throat. "I understand. This isn't a reprimand, Mr. Ellis. Just awareness." Awareness. What a careful word. He nodded once. Understood. Then he left the room. Back in his classroom, he sat down at his desk, stared at the wall for a moment. He could still hear her words. Not disciplinary, not official. Just a pressure, a warning. Be smaller, be safer, be less. But he also knew this. He was not hired to make people comfortable. He was hired to make students better. And that's exactly what he intended to keep doing. The hallway buzzed with that particular energy only school events have. Folding chairs being dragged into place, children showing off glitter-covered posters, parents holding coffee cups they didn't need. Outside room 205, the crowd gathered slowly. Karen Whitmore stood near the door, clutching her purse a little too tightly, her expression calm but cautious. She glanced at the other parents, gave polite smiles. She wasn't nervous exactly, but she was expecting to be proven right. She had never met Mr. Ellis in person, just seen him in glimpses, tall, serious, sharply dressed. He didn't wave much, didn't linger in the parking lot, just came in, taught, left. To her, that read as distant, cold, and maybe she'd admit to herself, threatening. Inside the room, the walls were alive with student work. Essays on justice and fairness, science fair posters labeled in meticulous handwriting, a class quote board that read, "We don't do easy. We do excellent." Mr. Ellis Karen blinked. That didn't sound like intimidation. That sounded like purpose. The door opened and Mr. Ellis stepped in. He wasn't what she expected. He greeted every parent with a firm handshake, direct eye contact, and a warmth that was calm, not performative. He remembered names, referred to students by their strengths. Tyler's spatial reasoning is incredible. Emily's poetry voice? Sharp and clear. Noah's asking big questions. That's what I want to see. He didn't boast. He didn't flatter. He knew these kids. When it was time to speak, he stood in front of the smartboard and addressed the group plainly. In this classroom, your children are expected to think deeply, speak clearly, and respect each other. I challenge them because I believe they're capable. I give structure because safety starts with consistency. I don't raise my voice, I don't tolerate cruelty, and I never ever underestimate them. Silence. Then a few quiet nods. One parent clapped, then others followed. Karen stood still. She looked over at her son, Jacob, who was proudly pointing out his essay to another parent. Mr. Ellis helped me rewrite the ending. He said it was already good, but I could make it great. Karen's face shifted. Something softening, something questioning. This wasn't the cold, harsh figure she'd imagined. This was a man who saw her son and expected him to rise. After the event, Karen approached slowly. Mr. Ellis. Hi, I'm Jacob's mom. He smiled, extended his hand. Of course. Jacob's a sharp thinker. She hesitated. He really enjoys your class. Glad to hear that. A pause. I think maybe I misunderstood a few things early on, she said. He just nodded. That happens. No bitterness, no smugness, just grace. Karen walked away quietly, the words stern and intimidating, unraveling in her head, thread by thread. It started in the back seat on a Tuesday. Karen was driving Jacob home from school, distracted by traffic and a work email. Her son sat quietly staring out the window until he suddenly said, Mr. Ellis says I'm a natural writer. Karen blinked. Really? He told you that? Jacob nodded, eyes still on the trees passing by. He said my metaphors were advanced. I had to Google what that meant. What were you writing about? Justice. For the essay contest. He gave me extra feedback after class. Karen's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. Not from discomfort, but from something else she couldn't name yet. A mix of pride and shame. When was the last time she'd seen a teacher go out of their way like that? That night, while Jacob worked on his essay at the kitchen table, Karen opened her laptop and searched, Mr. Elijah Ellis plus Education Award. She wasn't sure why. The first result hit like a wave. National Educator of the Year finalist, Elijah Ellis, for excellence in literacy and equity in urban classrooms. The article described him as a reformer, a teacher who'd spent years in underserved schools, developing programs to help boys of color succeed through literacy and storytelling. Photos showed him smiling with former students, arms around kids now in college, headlines like, Teacher turns readers into leaders. Karen sat back in her chair. She realized in that moment she'd never once tried to learn who he was, just how he made her feel. And suddenly, her earlier complaints, the emails, the side comments to other parents, the concerned tone, felt hollow, small. The next morning, she stood at the front door, watching Jacob sling his backpack over one shoulder. Before he walked out, she asked, Hey, do you like Mr. Ellis? Jacob looked confused by the question. Yeah, he's tough, but he's fair, and he listens. Karen nodded slowly. Do you feel safe in his class? He grinned. Safer than Jim. And then he was out the door. Karen stayed frozen for a moment, not because she was unsure of Mr. Ellis anymore, but because she had to face something else now. Her own bias, not loud, not violent, not filled with slurs, but quiet, dressed up in concern, wrapped in coded words like fit and tone and community, projected through the eyes of a white mother who assumed discomfort meant danger. And now, she knew better. 2 weeks later, the principal called for a community listening session. It was framed as a standard feedback night, but everyone knew why they were there. The school auditorium filled quickly. Folding chairs squeaked. Coffee steamed in paper cups. Parents murmured in small clusters, eyeing the front row where Mr. Ellis sat, calm, still, alone. Karen walked in late, slipped into a seat near the middle. Her stomach felt tight. Principal Halberg stepped up to the podium, clearing her throat. Her voice was steady but serious. We've invited you here tonight because several parents raised concerns about classroom culture, particularly in room 205. Before we move forward, I want to share some data. She clicked the remote. A slide lit up behind her. Student Climate Survey, Mr. Ellis, room 205. 94% of students said they felt challenged in a good way. 91% said they felt respected. 89% named Mr. Ellis as a teacher who believes in me. 0 reports of disciplinary issues or safety complaints. The room fell silent. Another slide appeared. Anonymous student quotes. He makes us believe we can do more. He doesn't yell. He just expects us to rise. He's the first teacher who told me my voice matters. Karen's chest tightened. It was Jacob's handwriting. She recognized it. Then, Principal Halberg took a breath. We've also reflected on how concerns were raised. Many of them were vague, based on feelings, often unsupported by any incident or evidence. And, in light of what we've seen, they appear to stem more from perception than reality. Murmurs in the crowd, some uncomfortable shifting in seats. We must ask ourselves, why is a black male teacher with high standards assumed to be harsh, while a white male teacher is called rigorous? Why is calm mistaken for cold, and structure mistaken for threat? She let the words hang. We want to be a school that not only teaches equity, but lives it. And with that, she stepped back. A hand raised. It was Karen. Every head turned. She stood slowly, cheeks flushed, voice trembling, but firm. I was one of the parents who raised concerns. I didn't know Mr. Ellis. I hadn't spoken to him. I didn't visit his classroom. I just felt uncomfortable. And now I understand that feeling wasn't about him. It was about me, and what I've been taught to fear without question. I'm sorry. Truly a pause. And thank you for not giving up on our kids. Or on us. She sat. Her hands were shaking. But beside her, someone started to clap. Then another. Then more. It wasn't loud, but it was real. And Mr. Ellis, still seated near the front, simply nodded. Not in victory, but in acknowledgement. It was quiet in room 205. Sunlight pooled on the floor as Mr. Ellis straightened stacks of paper and wiped down desks. The smell of pencil shavings and dry erase markers lingered in the air. The scent of a classroom lived in with purpose. There was a knock at the door. Karen stood in the hallway holding a small envelope. Hi, I know it's after hours. I just wanted to drop this off. She stepped inside, offered the envelope. From Jacob and me? No expectations, just thanks. Mr. Ellis took it, nodded once. No questions, no assumptions. He's doing really well, he said. His voice is becoming clearer. Karen smiled faintly. He told me he wants to write a book one day. I don't think he ever believed that was possible before this class. Ellis raised an eyebrow, a small smile at the edge of his mouth. Sounds like he believes it now. She paused, then added, so do I. That evening at home, Karen sat at the kitchen table while Jacob read his essay aloud to her, the one Mr. Ellis had submitted for the statewide contest. It's called Seeing Past the First Look, he explained. She listened, her eyes stinging as he read. Sometimes we look at people and think we already know them. But that's not fair, because the person who changed my life didn't smile all the time, or give out candy, or try to be everyone's friend. He believed in me before I knew how to believe in myself, and he never told me who to be. He just reminded me who I already was. Karen stood quietly in the doorway. Later that night, watching Jacob asleep with his journal on his chest, she thought back to that first email. The tone of it, the coded language, the unease she hadn't challenged in herself. Now, she didn't want to forget it. Because this wasn't just about Mr. Ellis. It was about learning, growth, and the fact that sometimes the most powerful education doesn't come from textbooks. It comes from facing the truth, especially about ourselves. In room 205 the next morning, the bell rang. Mr. Ellis stood by the door, greeting each student by name as they walked in. He didn't change his tone. He didn't change his rules. He just taught, because that's what he was born to do.